So welcome to module 25, and in this video I want to go over my wizard build. This will be for the thaumaturge and primarily for single target damage. This will be when you're going up against a boss where all that really matters is that you do damage against your one enemy. Here we're running the new trial, and it is primarily just single target damage, except for the first phase you do have some adds you need to kill, and so yeah, you will want a little bit of AoE, and we'll discuss that when we get there. So let's first dive into my power selection. We're a thaumaturge and we're trying to focus on dealing as much damage against that one target. So with our at-wills, it's Chilling Cloud. Every 10 seconds or so you want to use 1 or 2 missile strikes, and that'll allow you to make sure you maintain your arcane mastery stacks. Otherwise, just hold down that Chilling Cloud button. With our encounter powers, it kind of can vary. If you want high burst damage, you can go with Icy Rays on your tab. That's being your spell mastery slot. It just increases its magnitude. You can see up to 1,000 when you use it against a single target. And then you can use Entangling Force, Repel, and Chill Strikes. Alternatively, you could use Fireball on tab. It works, and you could have Icy Rays instead of Entangling Force. And that way you have a bit more sustained damage. And of course, if you're going for that support, buffing, and if you're the only wizard in the group, I highly recommend have Ray of Enfeeblement, because you'll give yourself this damage boost, which will mean you do more burst damage. Especially if you have some Warlock DPS, they'll appreciate that buff as well. And then of course it would just be Icy Rays, Repel, and Chill Strike. You're pretty much just using them when they're off cooldown. If you are running with Ray, you can time it so that you have that Ray cast before you cast these other encounters. That way you're giving them the actual buff, because the buff from Ray only lasts 10 seconds. If you're not using that, well then it pretty much doesn't matter. But I would recommend, like, if starting out in a fight and you have gear pieces that requires you to activate procs, for example, if we had this crit helmet, then you'd want to use Fireball first, then Repel, then Chill Strike, and then Icy Rays. Basically you want to use those powers that aren't getting that much damage before the ones that are going to deal more damage, so that you basically get your stacks by using the other powers first. And the reason I'll say Chill Strike would deal more damage is because it also contributes with Shadow Strike, whereas Fireball won't. Same with Ray on Enfeeblement, it won't proc Shadow Strike either, and it's more of a support spell which deals damage over time. Anyway, daily power single target, it's totally just Ice Knife. If you do have some adds, you want to be running Arcane Singularity. This, in combination with feats like Combustive Action, Glowing Flames, and Directed Flames, deals an absolute ton of damage. Class features, again, in single target damage, it's critical conflagration and a swath of destruction. If you have other wizards in the group, you can switch to Chilling Presence, but if you want to be doing any AoE damage, make sure you either have combustive or swath of destruction, because there's a bug there which makes, again, Glowing Flames and Directed Flames proc with Arcane Singularity, where it kind of shouldn't. But again, mainly I just switch between these two. If there's adds to kill, then yeah, definitely just take Combustive Action, and you'll gain some more action points and be able to cast more dailies more often, especially in that first fight of MTOS. Feats, you can see my selection here. Totally just Smoldering Recovery. Have not found the recharge speed of Relative Haste to be much use at all, especially when you're against only one target. You only gain 5% from this, and you're better off with a little bit more action point gain. Glowing Flames, absolutely. Again, if you're in a fight where you're going to be killing enemies, this is the go-to. The other one, Icy Veins, it's even in true single target fights, it's not much use. It's very easy to keep up your chilled stacks just by your at-will, especially if you have other wizards in the group. And then Shadow Strike, absolutely. Critical burn just for the stats. Frigid Wind works, and it's good on paper, but it does not seem to give the damage boost that critical burn allows you to gain. And also using that to gain those stats allows you to move and have different gear pieces to prioritize stats elsewhere. And lastly, Directed Flames. You can say Rhymefire Weaving can be better in, I would say, dungeons where you don't have a whole lot of debuffs on the enemy. But once you're in a trial and you have a ton of debuffs, Directed Flames can just be better, because the amount of debuffs you have, and thus the actual bonus from this of 10%, just gets really diminished, and you're better off dealing some actual more damage. And again, if you want to be taking advantage of that AoE damage that you can have, then it's also best to have directed flames. Again, for the rotation of what you're using, if you have your Ray of Enfeeblement for the extra support and damage, you're just always trying to use that. And one of the most important things with single target is your rotation in terms of an artifact call. That's the most important part. You want to start out by using that artifact, then using the tab, then repel, chill strike, icy rays, ice knife, and mount power, and you're pretty much good to go. If you do have a belt item like Hawk or your Dragonfire, like if it's the Dragonfire, make sure to cast it right from the beginning, because the dot damage will then go over 10 seconds, so you want that for the full time your artifact's active. And otherwise the Hawk, just throw it in then after you've done your mount near the end there. But just be aware that you want to give like 5 seconds for everybody to cast their artifacts. So cast your artifact, wait 5 seconds, and then dump all your encounters, mount, and daily within 5 seconds during the last 5 seconds of those artifacts being active. Everybody else in the trial or dungeon should be casting their artifacts as well and mount powers. And that's basically like one of the main ways to increase your single target damage is by optimizing that timing of that rotation for the artifact call. If you're not taking advantage of the artifact call, you're going to be losing out massively on damage. So we move to our stats, and you can see this is my build right here. All this gear is available in the game right now, and you can see my statistics. When we're fully buffed up with all of our food here and our spider totem, we can see our stats out of combat look like so. Now, when we are in combat and we are in a full party, we end up stats like this: 90% power, 90% combat advantage, 90% crit severity, and the only thing then we miss is a bunch of critical strike and some accuracy. And so when we do go in a fight, we will end up with some added accuracy through the Mythic Lightning Flash. You want to be getting that with this module, and you go and you attack and you very quickly get those 3 stacks. That gives us the accuracy, and we also then gain our critical strike, which is pretty much 90%. And if you're again in a party like we are running with a paladin, you'll end up getting this crit aura, which will give you 2% extra, and you will be at that full 90%. You'll have all those green numbers. Now, how do I get these stats up? Well, that's through mainly being in a raptor group, a tamed raptor group. That will give you the 90% power. And if you're in a group with somebody running a tutor where you get class and session, you gain the 5% extra combat advantage. And if you're running endgame, a healer or a tank will always have a tutor at this point. Yeah, it's very accessible and most people will have that, and you will gain that extra 5% boost. So it is something you can build around. And when we're in a party, we will gain the 10,000 crit severity from these boots, and that'll get us to 90% there as well. And we're even wasting a little bit. And then the critical strike will go to 90% with precision along with the lightning flash. So let's move on to the gear I'm using, and you can see this build. Again, all gear available in game right now. You don't have to complete the master trial or anything. So we have these rings from Master Temple of the Spider. I will show a build just in a sec where I use the new rings that you can get from Master Gzemnid's Reliquary, but I don't believe anybody's actually completed that just yet on the live server, so nobody really has those rings. So in terms of gear, we're running the headpiece, which just gives us damage in Underdark. If you're not in Underdark and want to use this build, well, I would switch to this Alliance Officer's Cap. You can get it for seals, and it'll just give you a bunch of accuracy when your stamina is over 75%. You shouldn't have to dodge around all too much, and thus you should be able to maintain that accuracy bonus. But the trial is considered being in Underdark, and so we can take advantage of this small damage boost. Now this headpiece, this one right here, would just come from the Zen Market. You can get it off the auction house, and yeah, again, just run the Alliance one for accuracy if this one's out of your budget range, you don't have it already. The armor piece comes from Master Temple of the Spider, just grinding the currency from within there, and in the North Dark Reaches, then you can go and buy that armor piece. Then with Menza Baranzin, you can actually go and upgrade that armor piece using more reagents from Master Temple of the Spider. We have done so, gives us 6% damage and gives us 12% in Underdark, which I recommend. If you're not in Underdark, I would recommend switching to a different armor piece. For example, the Mighty Cuirass of the Dragon Hunter, giving you more accuracy and combat advantage. You will have to switch some things around in your build to dump some combat advantage so that you can optimize that. Then for our arms, I'm not exactly happy here. These arms are the new arms, and yes, they work to deal damage. You can check the log just here where I was using them. We have magnified force, but the damage was only like 1% of the damage I dealt, even actually less than that. And yeah, it's not much, but it works, and if you can get it to proc in an artifact call, it can hit for like 200, 300k depending on the debuffs. So it can work and just contributes to more damage. There are better alternatives. For survivability, you could use the Mighty Vambraces, and there's also another arms piece you could use for some recharge speed, the tactful ones. All of them don't really seem to give much benefit, especially these Mighty Vambraces. It will really depend on the fight. So it's up to you. I was running these ones to test them out and see what they would provide, how much damage they would deal, and it's nothing. These ones just come from the new campaign, Menza Brands, and you can check the store. The Vambraces, again, from Dragon Hunts. So are the tactful ones. I personally would go for these Fade Leaf Branches. Basically, they would give me 7.5% crit severity rating. And this would allow me on this build to dump the boots. To get rid of them, 7.5% crit severity would come from the arms then, and I could have different boots. I could run survivability boots, I could run damage boots, and so on. I could run combat advantage boots and then ditch this shirt and get this shirt instead, or if I didn't have a tutor or something or other. To give me a bit more flexibility. But that price tag is pretty steep. For the weapons, we're running just stronghold weapons. Weapons that give us the stronghold bonus, so like the mastered ones. You have the Fey ones that you can get as well with a bit higher item level. I wouldn't worry too much about that item level. It's not really going to be a big deal. And otherwise, again, the boots are running these because, yeah, we don't have those arms. For our neck and waist and artifact, we're running with the Mythalar set. Very simply just comes from doing your Dragonbone Veil campaign. You get it at the last reward there. Alternatives, you could use the Dragon set, comes from Dragon Slayer, and it would give you a bunch of stats up to 7.5% when using encounter powers. You can make that work and it would give you some more stats, allow you again to move things around. Like if we didn't have a tutor in the group, I could run that set for the extra combat advantage. The Mythalar set, you can see the log, you can see the damage of raw pressure from Mythalar set, and it's again nothing special. It's not a set I would highly recommend for single target, but right now there's not many better options, so just go with that. And the main reason is because the intelligence you gain on the neck there. For the rings, you can see both these mythic rings just come from Master Temple of the Spider. You can use alternative rings from Dragon Hunts like the Soothsayers and the Clarity Ring. Those you can use as like stepping stone until you manage to do Master Temple Spider to get these. Then a shirt that just come again from doing mini bosses within the Dragonbone Veil. You can check that out, look it up. And the trousers again just come from Dragon Slayer doing your Dragon Hunts and buying it there. Just make sure you buy the one with 2400 critical strike. Now before we go over modifications, you can check my build for the new rings. Let's say you complete Master Gzemnids and you want to min-max. You want to get these new rings. You want to get this one where you get 10% damage against beholders. And for this build, I would recommend getting the one with 6% combat advantage. And that way you also gain the set by using both those rings where you get 2% more damage against bosses. So in total, you'll gain like 12% more damage. And you also have the chance then to deal that extra damage hit, which is just going to be nothing. And that is what I would then use. Now, you will see you'll end up with too much crit strike. You're going to have to switch some thingers around, like using the combat advantage here instead. And there you go, our stats are pretty good. But that means enchantments, we switched over to a bunch of power instead of critical strike. And the boon as well, the guild boon's gone over to power. And that means we end up with too much power and we're kind of just wasting it. So you might want to switch to enchantments that give you like Cobalt, Crit Severity instead, but that ends up pretty expensive having to switch that. And yeah, expensive to run with these rings, and they're also very hard to obtain, so we'll see what happens. But again, switching back to the other build, this chest plate here that gives damage in Underdark. If you're not in Underdark, I would recommend running the Mighty Courtiers and basically dump a bunch of combat advantage, like switching the shard over. You can also switch to Wildstorm Elixir and then switch the boots out to, yeah, something else. Something that would like either give you damage or survivability. Let's be honest, there's not much great boot options at the moment. If you're in Temple of the Spider, yeah, you could run the Temple of the Spider boots, but you will have to do some extra optimizing there to make that work for you. But for now, the majority of endgame content is in Underdark, including your Temple of the Spider, so we just go with that armor. So let's move on to our modifications. For the modifications, we have like the armor kits. We can see we're using a critical strike here, accuracy here, I believe another critical strike here, and another accuracy here. For the weapons, we have on the main hand, of course, the enhanced Chilling Cloud, 10% extra damage there, and then action point gain and enhanced critical strike here. And otherwise, we have, of course, combat advantage on the neck, rings, and the waist. That's just those jewels right there. So we move to our enchantments, and you can see my setup right here. I've tried to always stick with the enchantments that I have upgraded from the beginning that I've used across all of my builds. And that's just very simply this setup of enchantments. We have a total of 4 jades, 1 citrine, and 4 garnets. And that allows me still to optimize my stats by using just that combination, and we are doing so in this build. Overloads, just a Rage of Flames and Devil's Precision suits you in all content. If you're in particular fights where you're fighting dragons, you could use like the dragon one, you could use the Drow Slayer one, you could use Demon Slayer against Demogorgon. It just depends on the fight. And no, this new trail, he does not count as like undead, he does not count as demon, he's a beholder, guys. There's no overload that's going to work against him. Combat Enchantment, of course, the new Lightning Flash. You can wait 2 weeks until you get enough progress on Menza Branson, and you'll be able to farm that out, get the currency, buy it for yourself, and upgrade it. It's very good. Yes, you can still use Poison Thorn or Cursed Burn. That's not the end of the world. If you're still upgrading things in your character and already have it on Mythic, then I would stick with it until later on when you have everything maxed. You can switch to this and invest in it, or just upgrade it slowly with free coal motes and glyphs and stuff that you get. We are running with the bonus movement speed because, again, especially in content where you're still learning and you need to make sure you're in the right position, it can be helpful to have that added bit of speed, that bit of movement, so you can get places a bit quicker where you need to. Once you learn the timing and the mechanics, it can be easier to predict and know where you need to be. But yeah, then you could switch to recharge speed or action points depending on what you need for your build. For the artifacts, you can see this setup here. We're mainly just running all the high item level artifacts. Technically, the best in stock ones from Module 25 will be this Wand of Domination. Like, if you don't have that, feel free to switch over to the Assassin's Dice. But the Wand of Domination will be best because it has 1500 item level. And then also the artifact, the Rod of Pain from the Zen Market, is best in stock because of the 1500 item level along with the offensive stats. I wouldn't run on a wizard the 3 Storyteller books because the bonus damage they provide is not really anything, and you're better off with just the added item level for the extra damage for everything. You do want to be a bit flexible with your main artifact, your primary, to be able to switch to different artifacts that are going to support your team in dealing extra damage against your target. Very nicely, the Dragonbone's Blades, the Tentacle, the Wand, Mythallar are all options you can use along with the dice, and then we have like a lantern here. So all very good options you can use to support your team. A full list of all the support ones right here. So we move on to our race and ability scores, and for this build we have a Wood Elf. There are other options you can use like Human, like Gith, Dragonborn, but you will have to switch some stats around a bit more. Ability scores, you can see it's just Intelligence all the way and then Charisma. If you're are struggling to get this crit severity to where it needs to be, 90%, again, when we're in a party, we get an extra 10,000 ratings, which will boost this up to 90%. If you're struggling, you can use dexterity instead of charisma. Dexterity will give more damage if you can actually make use of the crit severity. So we move on to our companions, and this is our setup. For our active companion, I do recommend the green scale bowman as the best. However, right now there is a bug with the Blaspheme Assassin where if everybody uses it, they can stack the bleeds from twin daggers and basically stack off each other to deal insane damage over time. But it's not going to stay like that. It's been confirmed from the devs that they will fix it. And so I would recommend the green scale bowman as the next best because he's ranged, he can stand back and he can shoot his target, dealing damage. He doesn't have to be adjacent to them, and so he'll probably die less by not getting hit by certain mechanics, and he's overall able to sustain more damage than the other companions compared to your pseudo dragon, compared to your honey badger. He just has a good setup, being able to shoot from a distance. But again, there's a lot of other usable options. I wouldn't go out of your way to just upgrade a companion when you already have something that can do pretty well, like the Batiri, Black Death, Scorpion, Kuatua, so on. They're all pretty close these days with the encounter DPS. For our companion equipment, you can see all this stuff here. 1600 item level. Very simply just comes from doing your North Dark reaches, grinding out the campaign, and buying that gear right here. You can check videos on how to get it. And of course, a mythic companion enchantment, nothing else goes there, and you can see then this setup of bonuses. We have precision here for the critical strike, we have bigger they are from Minsk for the extra damage, we have Neverwinter Night again for the extra damage. This is very exclusive companion, you can't really obtain it anymore. I would recommend if you don't have it, switch to like Jarlaxle for the accuracy, or use your Black Dragon Insight for the critical strike. That's actually a very good feasible option, and then switch precision over to accuracy instead. Then we have the Raptor, the tamed Velociraptor for the extra power, and when you're in a party that gets boosted up to a total of 18.75% power to everybody. It's massive, I would recommend it. And then the 11.25% damage against bosses from the Batiri, and the Alchemist for the crit strike and the combat advantage. And that's it. We move to the mounts. Here on our current tab, we have, of course, tunnel vision. We have like the golden touch, or you can use tunnel vision, or you can use the giant toad tongue lash from the legendary giant toad. Then for our equip power, we have currently slotted pack tactics. If somebody else in the party is running pack tactics, we can switch over to ferocity just for a small damage boost, just because we already have enough ratings and we don't need any more than what pack tactics would give us with that little bit of combat advantage. In our stable, you can see my setup. Just check the insignia bonuses. That's 2 warlords to buff up our companions' damage, an artificer's persuasion to help get the cooldowns off our encounters for the artifact call, and 2 assassin's covenant is what I would usually run with. However, if you have spent to get this new mount, you could run with mender's covenant instead of another assassin's covenant. Mender's covenant will allow you to have an extra insignia slotted, and with that being the preferred one, you gain 600 more item level instead of a normal insignia at 500. Menders you can make use of because it still provides you crit strike, crit severity, and power. And you could waste your 5 tokens from the event appointment vendor, the achievement tokens, to get the Balgora and use your Executioner's Covenant instead of Assassin's Covenant. But that's an expensive option. But if you're min-maxing, then yeah, it's viable if you want to get that edge. You can see the different insignias we're using. Just check their colors and you can match them up to what they are. We have some dominance, brutality, some skill, and that's it. For the colors, the priority is encounter power damage and the crit severity. From there, you can just get some movement speed, you can get some stamina gain, and you can get some rough astral diamond. Lastly, our boons. Go to a stronghold, and for this build, you want to have the crit strike one. And again, if you're running challenging content where you might die like I do just here due to getting aggro because my tank wasn't paying attention, then Revive Sickness will reduce the damage reduction that you gain by dying and getting a skull. Usually it's 10%. With the boon, it reduces to just 5%. So it's pretty massive, and yeah, you really need it for a trial like this. For your campaigns, I wouldn't worry too much about it, but you want to just pick up all the power here. You want to pick up all these offensive stats here and make sure you grab the movement speed as well. Very, very nice for questing and such, and then just having the extra movement speed. Tier 5, get up your forte and get your quick turnaround for recharge speed or action point gain if you struggle to get your data power every minute. And then Master Boon, Bloodlust. There's no real better option, and the damage it deals is like nothing. You can see it right there. Minuscule. It's like half of the percentage of our overall damage, and the reduction to the enemy's defense is broken and doesn't work. I wouldn't rush to get boon points. It's not the end of the world. Don't spend much to obtain them. Take your time. So that is overall my build, and we can see our buffs right here, all of the ones we have currently active. We have right now our spider totem. Again, that spider totem on our belt just comes from doing, again, your North Dark Reaches, doing your Master Temple of the Spider, and you should be able to obtain the spider totem on the right side here if you haven't done so already, and then be able to upgrade it to Mythic. It gives us a bunch of combat advantage, as we see there, 2.5% of some damage against Drow. It's better than a Forger's Box in my opinion, because it gives you a set of a lot more reliable stats, and also you don't really need the power if you're running with Raptors. And then you can see we have the Monitor's Light there, Sated, Squash Soup, and Potency, and that just comes from using these 4 buffs. Flasked Potency, pretty cheap. Squash Soup, unfortunately, very expensive, and you might even want to just not run with this, switch some stats around a little bit, and then just wait until you can farm it yourself. Some people might have loads of it already. Then Sunlord's Gift Elixir, very easily just comes from here, your Ardent Favor, your Vault of Piety, and then you have your Ratatouille, comes from your guild. You should be able to buy the food there from the vendor, and then an Invocation Blessing. We use an Invocation Blessing on this build to get like accuracy or crit severity, depending on what the group can provide us. Usually you'll have Runic Aura, you'll have Mystic Aura. Mystic Aura will get our accuracy rating capped out, giving us like another 1% there. Crit severity is already capped, so that doesn't matter. And then power will get again to 90% in a full tamed raptor group. And overall, that is my build. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below and I'll get back to you. If you have any burning questions and want to talk with me and share your build and ask for some advice, just better off message me on Discord. You'll get much easier response there. Comments can just get lost because I can end up just some days getting just too many I can't keep up. Massive thank you again to all of these channel members for their continued support. You can support me by clicking the join button down below for as little as €1 a month. And we'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.